Welcome to episode 9 of the Court Electric Player's Guide. This is going to look at the franchise player idea. Now, the franchise player is going to be fairly simple here, and it only is going to apply to a couple teams right now, so it's a pretty basic concept. So what we have is, well, no, it's complication on complication, but what it really does is it protects one player on your team from being picked up or bid on, more accurately, in the restricted free agency period. So it's a way to lock in, the idea being that previously we were allowing restricted free agency to happen an unlimited amount of times for each team. So one team could lose like 3-4 players. So in some ways the franchise player may be a little archaic, but but I still think it may be somewhat important at least. But it protects one player so that one of your players that are up for re-signing, especially probably useful for rookies and stuff if they are a breakout superstar or something. But anyway, it protects one of your restricted free agents, qualifying offer for rookies or just a regular restricted free agent guy, from being bid on if you're willing to up his contract to a franchise level contract. So the franchise player, before the restricted free agency happens, you can anoint one of your franchise players, one of your restricted free agents franchise status. If you give them franchise status, they cannot be signed to an offer sheet, but they have to be given this year a $20 million want value, which is what it's been in the past. And then going forward, that is going to actually increase to a $25 million want value. So that contract is pretty hefty. As you can see, for this season, that meant that a player at $20 million value, that's his value in red. This is from previous seasons. The salaries have adjusted slightly, but it basically starts at almost $11 million, goes up to almost 12, up to almost a little over 12, and goes to a little over 13. So this it's been adjusted a tiny bit because we realigned our salaries. But this year, what that meant was that, for example, our guys that when we started this process, that they're in their third year. I got Derrick Rose. He's in his third year of his franchise anointment. He's at $13.3 million. Other guys that are at the franchise, if they're in their second year of it, LaMarcus Aldridge is at $12.4 million. We can see LeBron and Deron are both we're both franchise guys that are at $13.3 million. Now Fila is traded for Darren Williams. That's why he has two of them. But and in theory, you could have as many as you want. You can do a different guy every single year, re-anoint them franchise status. It's kind of like franchise status in the NFL. This is not a true NBA rule, but it is something that we decided to protect players by offering this ability. So you can anoint a player franchise status. If you do, you're going to give them a 20 this year, 20, but in the future, $25 million want value, 25 there, and if they get that status, typically we've never actually had anybody not give them a 3-year deal. In theory, it could be a 2-year deal or even a 1-year deal for a crazy $20 million or whatever. But in real life, in practical application, it's always been a 3-year deal because then that's why he's a franchise type guy. So it ends up being a high contract, but it might not be as high as someone might get in just flat out unrestricted free agency. But it's pretty dang close. There's only a handful of guys that in the auction end up going. Kobe, I think last year, Dwight Howard. A couple guys, Chris Paul maybe, that go for higher than the franchise value. So it's kind of a ceiling. It's an effective ceiling in a lot of ways. So some guys might get 1 or 2 more if they're really big and have gone to the auction. Now, so franchise status locks you into a contract, and so then you can't be bid on in the restricted free agency period. In regular restricted free agency, anybody can be bid on. So if I've got my team. And if you've got a contract, of course you can't be bid on, of course. But any RFA could be bid on. Now, if Enes Kanter last year had just broke out and become an 18-10 guy all season, besides just not when Jefferson was hurt, I might want to lock him in. I would have to wait and match any bid on him. He could get sniped in free agency. Instead, I could give him franchise status, and he's not exposed to free agency, so I don't have to worry about his contract going crazy. But I do have to give him a pretty dang good contract anyway, which is why we could argue that maybe the franchise system isn't even really necessary anymore. But it was a legacy when we used to allow restricted free agency. You could pick up multiple guys, and so teams in theory could lose 3, 4, 5 guys just because they built a great team. But that is the franchise status. You are able to give it to players. There's only a handful of teams right now that it would even apply to. Really, realistically, I mean, Filas have huge cap implications. The unnamed have huge cap problems and tons of guys. I am right on my cap limit, and I already have a franchise guy. Anointing another one doesn't really make sense. I don't really have the players. Rocket Fire may make sense too because they've got all those qualifying offer dudes, a couple of which are franchisee type guys that might get bid on. So there, he could actually anoint that, though that's going to increase his salary quite a bit. He might as well just risk. One argument is that he might as well risk those guys getting bid on and just matching one of them, since only one is going to be bid on anyway. But he could try to protect them that way. The Skanks don't have anyone. Well, yeah, they already have Marcus Aldridge, and they have cap problems in play. No, they're actually got money left, so they're doing pretty good. But they have 6 guys already. I don't really see any of those guys as or any of their free agent guys is worthy of being protection. Of course, these guys already have contracts that we're looking at here, so they wouldn't be subject to giving a franchise. You'd give a franchise guy who is an RFA. But kind of down the line, there's only a handful of teams that would really make sense for, because they already have it. Vlade. But they don't really have any other keepers. They could do it in theory. So really, the expansion guys might annoy a franchise, but just keep in mind it's going to be much more in play for next year. Next year, all those other guys' contracts, LeBron, Derrick Rose, Kevin Durant, all these players for the first time in 3 years are going to be up for availability. So then there's going to be a big choice for all of your teams. Are you going to re-franchise them to re-sign them? Again, that contract goes up to $25 million, so their first $25 million want. So if you sign, if I sign Derrick Rose or G. Hill Phillips re-sign LeBron James to a 3-year deal, they'll be getting $13.5 million, almost $15 million, almost over $16 million for their next contract. So that's going up considerably next season. So it's a bigger thing for next year, but it's certainly still in play this year. Franchise status. Once we anoint our franchise players, then that's the last step before we start restricted free agency. If anyone has any questions on that, certainly ask me. But that'll finish up this episode.